Hello and welcome to Beyond the Table, and welcome to a show where I get to hang out with people who are passionate about the games that they design. And we get to share great stories about how they were designed, what the philosophy was, and we just end up talking about beauty in gaming, which is something that is, very important and close to my heart. And I have here Alexander Macris with me. Alexander, I know I say this every time we meet, but you were one of the first interviews I ever did back on the Iconic podcast when we had done just a couple of episodes for 13th Age. And I was like, I got this game, Adventure Conquer King, and I'm really excited about it. And I appreciate this is like third or fourth time we've chatted. I appreciate you coming on and hanging out and talking. Oh, now you're muted. There we go. Oh. Sorry, new software.
No, all good. All right, yeah, no, it's my pleasure to be here. It's always good to be back, and I think actually, not only was I one of your first guests, but I think it was one of my first podcast interviews. I went through a dark period where I didn't really do anything, and then people brought me back in from the cold, and you were one of the people, man. So thank you.
Oh man, I always appreciate your willingness to just hang out and chat and talk about the things that inspire you. And I mean, for people who don't know, one of the main inspirations for the math behind my own game, Jackals, is Adventure Conquer King. And then I heard you were going to do a game that was D100 based. And I was like, well, you had me at the D100. And we are going to talk about Ascendant here, but you have first of all, hello to everyone in the chat. Yes, Ben, the only problem is I don't like George R.R. Martin's writing style. And so anything I can do to further this, you may have convinced me to shave my beard.
Oh, no.
So before we get into it, you had a great Kickstarter for ACKS and the Treasure Trove or Treasure Tome. There we go. No. And I mean, I've got the book sitting on my shelf. I signal boosted earlier this week because I'm trying to signal boost people who are doing great YouTube channels that are mostly positive and putting out, again, this beauty and joy in gaming. Tom's Game Table, who's doing these excellent, bite-sized chunks of, making ACKS 2 a little bit digestible for people who maybe have not come up through ACKS or through heavy simulationist gaming. And for people who don't know, I came out of RuneQuest. I came out of games like Champions and GURPS, and so we'll get to Ascendant. But you have a new Kickstarter out, and I'm going to put the link in the chat. And it is doing. I wasn't going to talk about ACKS today, but it's doing well, and it just coincided that you had launched. And before all others, give us the rundown. Tell us about Before All Others.
Yeah, so Before All Others is the Cyclopedia of Elven Civilization. It is the sister book to Buy This ACKS, the Cyclopedia of Dwarven Civilization, which came out back in 2023. That was the last book of the ACKS product line, or the first book of the ACKS 2 product line, depending where you draw that line, because it kind of sits in the middle. And it was really popular, and people said, well, you've done the dwarf book, now you need to do an elf book. So having finally pushed ACKS 2 out the door, and the Treasure Tome has finally been finished editing, we're making all this good progress there, it was time to do the elf book. So if you've seen the dwarf book, it's very similar. It's got new classes, it's got new game mechanics, it's got the culture. I guess it's worth, for those of you who haven't seen it. So the approach I take is I look at all of the tropes that exist for the race. So, in the dwarf case, you had these tropes of they're miners, they're short, they eat mushrooms, they live underground, that kind of thing. For elves, it's they live in trees, they're ageless, they're good at archery, right? Or whatever tropes you want to assemble. Mm-hmm. And then I kind of reverse engineer, I abductively infer
reasoning,
what that species must be like in order to produce those tropes. And the elf book has proven much harder than the dwarf book because the tropes are less consistent. In fact, not only are they less consistent for elves, they're so much less consistent that there's actually a trope on TV Tropes about how elven tropes are not consistent. So on TV Tropes, they talk about all dwarves are the same, and that's a trope. And then there's a different one called all elves. Our elves are different. And so that really threw me for a ringer because I would come onto the Discord, be like, guys, I've had this great insight about elves. Like it works like this, and cue like 4,000 comments in response of people arguing about why this is completely wrong or this is completely right, and I don't know what I'm talking about, or I'm an elf genius. I mean, so it's been much more challenging because all the dwarf players are like, yeah, obviously, bro, yeah,
Yeah.
that's what we're like, absolutely, yep, 100%. The elves is totally different. So.
I was talking with Richard Rowland this morning on our Discord server, and he was like, yeah, By This Axe has become the definitive way that all dwarf cultures work in any game that I'm running. I'm like, exactly. Like, that's what it was for me. It was this distillation, as dwarves would do, distillation of, essential dwarf essence. Now, the last time I heard you talk about Before All Others, the code that you said you had cracked was that they were they had a historical analog to medieval Japan, early.
It's hilarious. They're Celtic. They're medieval Celtic Japanese.
Okay, can you like, we can leave it there if you'd like to unpack it.
No, it's so I initially thought they were Celtic because the aesthetic is Celtic, right?
Yeah.
And the druids and the fairy tales, and of course most of what we have of elven lore comes down to us through the Celts themselves and the two authors of Dan and the Irish, etc. So I'm like, oh, obviously they're Celtic, but when you dig into it, they're not really Celtic, right? The Celtic civilization was this very rugged, cattle herder based Scots, Irish, Highlanders, and a lot of that vibe was absorbed into the dwarves by way of Dragonlance and Flint Fireforge, who became Scottish themed. And so the elves end up not actually being Celtic. They have Celtic aesthetics, but not Celtic culture. So then I'm like, well, what are they really? And it turns out their actual cultural vibe more than anything else is Japanese. And you say, okay, you think about it. So you've got Japan is this, mountains and forests with, they have these. They have this nature religion of Shinto with nature priests that live at the temples and in remote places. They have a powerful, majestic court with lots of ritual with court wizards, or the Onimyodo in Japan, wizards in ACKS. They have your sort of allegedly magic using ninja assassin types, which are your elven night blades. They have their samurai with key powers, which become your sort of spell swords. Like, it all kind of clicked and fit. Even the emphasis on archery, right? Like, if you think about Japan, what were the samurai known for, right? Elegant sword play and archery. Like, okay, well, they're elves. Or like wearing lighter armor. I mean, everything. It
fits together.
It fits. And then of course, when you think, okay, if you were just going to ask off the top of your head, what fantasy race is the most anime fantasy race? It's obviously the elves.
Record of the Lotus War, right? Like,
it's obviously the elves. So that's my inspiration, and so they're medieval Celtic Japanese elves in a pseudo Rome setting.
I cannot wait for this book. I'm either going to play I'm always going to play a fighter if I'm ever not behind the GM screen, which is it happens so rarely that the fighter is always fresh to me. And it's either going to be an elven fighter or it's going to be a human fighter. And so I'm here for this book. Back in my second edition days, I loved the Book of Elves, and the writer, whose name escapes me right now, he, as part of one of Monty Cook Games' Kickstarters, if they hit a stretch goal, he was going to apologize for the Elven Spellsinger.
Oh, that's hilarious.
And his apology was, I'm sorry your GM didn't know how to actually enforce any of the limitations that we put into this kit. And I was like, that is the best apology for game design that I have ever heard.
So I love fighter types as well, particularly when they're magic influenced fighters. Like my favorite sweet spot is your warrior who augments with magic. And I think it's like my fantasy, because I always wanted to be a warrior, but when I went into the military, I actually discovered I had like strength 7, and I was like, oh, I don't meet the prime requisite. That sucks.
That's right. Yeah, there's
And
something about Elric that appeals to me as a
yeah, exactly.
skinny, frail man.
I'm like, if only I could feed upon the bloodied souls of my enemies to become physically more powerful. I would be a really great warrior. And yeah, so we've got lots of cool warrior type classes. In
That's
the book.
awesome.
Yeah, no, there's actually a whole section. So I see Slecarius is asking, I need some secrets of elven katana crafting. So there's actually a whole section on on elven swords, like let's see, the most notable characteristic of contemporary elven swords is that they've retained the recurved shape of the ancestral knife blade. Starting from the hilt, the blade extends straight for a short segment, before curving gently forward. At the midsection, the blade transitions into a reverse curve, bending back towards the hilt before gradually narrowing to a sharp point. The charge by the dwarven lore masters that elven swords resemble oversized skinning knives because they were originally designed to flay the flesh from dwarves must be dismissed as propaganda. In fact, the recurved design is maintained because it focuses force into a smaller area, lengthens the cutting edge relative to the length of the blade, and creates multiple angles of attack for any given cut. The manifest superiority of this form is evident to anyone who has seen a display of elven swordsmanship. But the recurved sword requires considerable dexterity to utilize, and this may be why within the Empire only the blade dancers wield them. Right.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
So the whole book is written so this is an important note, is the whole book is written from the point of view of a weeaboo, right? So he's this Aran, he's like this Aran historian who's been invited to tell the true story of the elves, and he gets like invited to the elven court, and they like hook him up with an elven wife and all the elven delights, and he's like, so he's writing the true story of the elves. And the difficulty of wielding elven swords is matched only by the difficulty of manufacturing them, a process that requires folding steel with the utmost perfection. I'm told some elven sword blades have been folded over 1 million times, a task that takes years of labor. How could any smith in the West in his limited lifespan hope to match such masterful work? So,
well, that was one of the things I loved about By This Axe is
yeah.
It was written as an in-world document.
Yeah.
Right. It was not written as, it is one of the most gameable setting books that I've ever held on to. Like, there's so much stuff that you're reading through and you're like, well, that's an adventure idea. That's a campaign idea. So it's not this high academic, I would never use this. It's eminently gameable.
That's the goal. Yeah, definitely want it to be gameable and a little bit and funny, right? Because it's like, we're taking on the role of essentially like a Roman philosopher sage who's like going into another culture, and he's trying to and so we as the reader being, modern contemporary Americans, there's like multiple levels of irony that are kind of spliced into it,
That's awesome.
So anyway, I hope people enjoy it. One of the advantages of writing it that way is you can always, like, if there's anything you don't like about it, you can disregard it because the sage got it wrong. Like, it's not how it works. He was wrong. So,
yeah, or you could go the Herodotus history route and have everyone assume that he got a bunch of stuff wrong.
But it's all true.
Until they encounter it and go, oh, wait, maybe he did know what he was talking about.
Right, exactly.
So after, after Before All Others, I think I got the time in that sentence correct. Are we going to see a Aran Empire source book for Acts 2 at any point?
I'd like to do that. I really would. The trick is I don't know how to do it.
You got to unlock that.
Yeah. So, like, on the one hand, I just want to do a box set where it's like, here's the map and here's an overview of everything. On the other hand, I want to do the gazetteers like they did for BECMI.
Yeah.
And it's two very different approaches.
Yes.
The setting books or the racial books seem really popular. So one thing I've thought about doing is just a series of those. So I've started to build a book called Under the Dread Flag, which is a pirate source book.
Yeah.
And then it would be a pirate source book set in the Aran Empire setting. And so it would give you the racial class information. I shouldn't say race because really it's an ethnicity.
Yeah.
For like the Sirnasan Islanders that live in the middle, and they're like the pirate peoples, along with like more rules for ships and piracy and things like that. I have an idea for doing one called After the Flesh, which would be the Zaharan, so like the ancient Zaharan Empire, maybe the Kameshi. So I don't know, like that might be the way to do it. maybe I should just do a box set and just call it, like, because people do want a lot of just, that, I constantly just get questions like, what about this? And what about this? What about this? I'm like, maybe I should just take all my notes and make a box set. So I don't know.
Now my absolute favorite post you've ever made on the Autark forums was the defense of Julius Caesar having to be stabbed so many times
because of his hit points. Yeah.
Yes, the hit points and political power was fantastic. But you also did one on how many enemies would you have to kill to forge a sword out of the blood of your enemies.
Yeah.
Did any of that make it into the elf forging?
No, that's not in there. That's not in there. Yeah.
Okay.
So, Full Metal Dragon says, "What about a Greek-inspired expansion?" So I actually did one of those. There's an Axioms about that. It's called Heroes and Hoplites. We've got we have like Pythagorean math magicians, and there's Pantocrator wrestlers, and all sorts of fun stuff.
Yeah. And you can get Axioms Compendium 1 and 2 off DriveThru RPG right now, and I've got both of them sitting on the shelf. There's what I like about the Axioms is that it feels very much to me like the old Dragon Magazine articles or the Rifter for Palladium, where it's like maybe there's one or two things in this article that right now pertains to my campaign.
Right.
But there's so much more that when I come back, I'm like, oh yeah, wait, which one was that in?
Yeah.
And I love being able to go back and just review them and see, oh hey, here's the rules for how to do a Senate in my ACKS campaign. That's fantastic. And a lot of that got rolled into ACKS 2.
It did, yeah, it did. ACKS 2, I mean, that was one of the beauties of doing Axioms was I threw a lot of stuff at the wall, so as to speak, like month after month, like here's a new idea, here's a new idea, here's an idea from the community, here's another idea, here's an idea based on the previous idea that you guys didn't like, but now I've made it better. And over like a 10-year period, some things it became clear, like people said, I love this needs to be part of the game, and others never really gained momentum. They didn't pan out. And so I think that made ACKS 2 much, much better than if I had just tried to sit down and say, I'm now creating a second edition, right? Like,
right.
So, yeah.
It was like a living workshop for you to kind of see how things worked.
Yes, exactly.
Well, and I also like, speaking of that, and I end up giving this book away to new dungeon masters and game masters that I meet that we talk about the game with. So I'm on my third or fourth copy, I think fourth or fifth copy of Arbiter of Worlds.
Oh, wow.
I love that you incorporated all of that into the judge's journal and really expanded out the GM advice into like, hey, there hasn't been like a really good how to be a dungeon master book that's a part of a game there's the first edition one. I mean, I think the Castle Keepers one by Troll Lord Games is pretty decent.
Yep.
But right around, I came to D&D in second edition, and that book is not so much how to be a DM, but like here are the DM half of the rules, chapter for chapter.
Right.
Third edition was the same way. Fourth edition was a lot of the same way, and the first printing of fifth edition was just basically here's all the rules and tables that you need, not how to do this. And I think that's, on one hand, that's how a lot of us learn to play. Like I had a role-playing game for years before I figured out actually what it was, and I had to do that by seeing someone else run a game.
Right. That's right.
But we've got better advice now. We've got decades of experience. We can explain this to people now.
Yeah. So if the DM advice for third edition was actually in Dungeon Master's Guide 2, so they had this DMG 2, and I think it was very bad advice, and I lambasted the advice when I wrote Arbiter of Worlds and whatnot. And I think part of the problem was not only did we have not enough advice, but the advice that was being given was bad advice. And that, I think, started to get worse when shows like Critical Role gave people the impression that being a dungeon master was primarily about being like this sort of narrating entertainer. And I think, like the guy who runs Critical Role, I want to stress this, right? So I don't know him personally, but I know him through a friend of a friend who I trust very much his judgment, and absolutely affirms he is a genuinely true believer who loves gaming and loves dungeon mastering, and is like his heart is 100% in it. And I think it shows in the show.
Yeah.
But it's just kind of like it's just not necessarily what you should aspire to do when you're running a campaign at home whose objective is not to entertain an audience. It's a different objective, right?
So I actually stopped streaming my games. I had a health incident a couple of years ago, and when I came back, I was looking at it, and while I enjoyed running the games and I enjoyed interacting with the chat, and I felt like in order to be a good version of my game, I wanted to interact with the chat. So I had ways for, like, if we were playing Savage Worlds, I could give the chat bennies and then they could spend them on what was happening at the table. The overhead of trying to do that and the different mindset, I wasn't enjoying it as much as I do when I just sit around with my friends and we're playing whatever game we're playing, and there's like 30 minutes of, hey, what's this funny YouTube video that we saw? We have our time at the beginning set aside to like bond. The Black Lodge Games guys were talking earlier this week about how at its core, the hobby you shouldn't invest in a hobby just for the hobby's sake. The hobby has to have some goal beyond just the hobby. And for gaming, for that's like the fact, I mean, it's the one thing we still do where we sit around the table.
Yeah.
And we're face to face with people.
Right.
I've got an article coming out in a book called The Liturgy of Role Playing, and how so many liturgical elements that have been absent, unless you're going to, high mass, if you will, they're gone. And everything is becoming much more, let's do it online. Let's just, not do things face to face, but we still gather. We still share food most of the time. We're in this timeless, space. And gaming is, I appreciated the Matt and Nick talking about how it's got to serve some, further purpose. And I would argue, like Tolkien, when he talks about on fairy stories, he's like, it's not just the story; it provides all of these things that, through the vehicle of the fairy story, we are renewed. Yes, and that's really important to me. So.
That's right. I agree with that completely. Actually, my one of my friends, Mike Capps, he's the former president of Epic Games, very, very high achieving man.
Yeah.
And he said to me once that he had discovered that high achieving men and men in general past a certain age have a lot of trouble in modern society being able to sustain their male friendships, because it's always easy to put off the friendship for something else that seems higher priority at the time. And that he had realized that by having regular gaming sessions, that he had been able to sustain way more friendships than he otherwise had. And it was like a really profound realization. And so he just made it a commitment that he would host a game at his house every week. And he has like a whole part of his house he has set aside for that. And like, even if he is traveling, he will allow us to go and have the game at his home to make sure that always happens, right? Like it's just righteousness, that he does that. And as a result, like there's this friendship group that does not fray. It's so meaningful.
I am very lucky, not just to have my 2 weekly games that I get to run, but that once a year, and we're celebrating, it's the 10th year this year, once a year, 8 to 10 of my, it's this group that's been around together for, we've all played together games longer than 10 years, but every October, we all come to my house and we spend 4 days locked in my studio just gaming. And it is something everyone makes time for, and we're always looking forward to it. And there is something necessary about that. That is sometimes hard to explain to people outside of that group, but it's a bond that forms and just continues to grow and grow deeper as the years progress.
That's right. Yeah, we are. So Mike, who I mentioned, does that every year. as well. And so every year, something like 20 people gather at his house and do games all weekend. And I've been having a couple of my friends come once a year. And this year, this year they actually are renting a what's it called, an Airbnb.
Yeah.
And because I think like 10 folks are showing up, there's just gonna be an Airbnb, and we're gonna game. Like, it's just a really beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And especially as more and more of life migrates online, having a
Yeah.
reason to do something offline is so key.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, that's a whole topic for another time. I could speak for hours on the importance of gathering together, even if it's only once a year, and then
Yep.
really digging in deep to friendship.
Absolutely.
Again, gaming as a vehicle for that.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
So,
and the breaking bread component,
Yeah.
eating together. Yeah.
There is something about gathering face to face with people that changes the way you interact with them.
Yep.
And changes not just your stance, but your heart towards the people that you're with. And it is a truly transcendent kind of experience.
Agreed.
It does sound like a couple of good episodes of BTS. I will make a note of that, John, and go from there. All right, so I am an outlier in the gaming community when people share their stories of how they got into gaming. I was in 5th grade, and a buddy of mine who I would routinely keep all of my change from my lunch money, and about once every month or 2 months, I would have enough money to have Angel draw one of my favorite superheroes for me. And he was just, he was amazing. And I really hope he went on to be an artist, because I still have his art pieces like hung up from 5th through 9th grade. And he came up to me one day and was like, "Hey, I got this book. It's full of superhero pictures. Do you want it?" And I was like, "Sure." And so I traded my lunch away for a copy of Heroes Unlimited Revised. So superhero gaming was my gateway drug. Now,
Nice.
and I've talked to Kevin about this. That book was so obtuse to me. I did not know it was a game. I thought it was a way of generating superheroes and knowing who would win in a fight so I could write my own comics.
Right.
For about 3 years.
Oh, wow.
In junior high, a buddy was like, "Hey, we're going to play GURPS. Do you want to join us?" And I was like, "What the hell's a GURPS?" But as soon as I was done with my first role-playing experience, I knew like 3 things. 1, I was hooked. 2, Heroes Unlimited was one of these things. And 3, I could probably do a better job of telling like DMing than the guy who introduced me to the game. And I've basically been running nonstop since
Ever
then.
since. Yeah. Awesome.
GURPS Supers was my first, and my second, and I quickly found Champions after that.
Right.
And Tom on his game table recently posted a video that I loved called "Is My Game Too Complex?"
Yes.
And talked about the rewarding nature of digging into a very complex game.
Right.
And learning it and having a game that was complex enough to grow with you.
Yeah.
And so that's why, I mean, I snagged Ascendant a long time ago. I've read through it several times. I've been noodling what I wanted to do with it. And I came up with this idea after talking with some friends about doing a superhero style West Marches game.
Okay.
Where basically, everybody makes 3 supers. You got a street level, kind of, a city level and a global level hero,
right,
and setting it in a city, and then just running a West Marches campaign kind of in the city with, like, you would have factions and you would have the rumors, right?
Oh, wow.
What gang is doing what villain has what plan going on. And I made the decision after I was like debating on a couple of different systems. And when I saw Tom's video, I'm like, well, that just pushed me over to Ascendant. I know the guy who wrote Ascendant. I should have him on to start talking about this. So I watched you GM it. I'm going to post a link in the show notes to where you did that with another YouTube channel. But why don't you give people kind of a high level view of Ascendant and why it's different maybe than other supers RPGs they may have encountered?
Sure. Okay, so Ascendant is intended to be a simulation of superhero physics, right? So that was like the core concept was, can you design a simulation of a superhero game simulating superhero physics? And then the means by which it does so is it takes a logarithmic approach to the attributes, which was inspired by Mayfair exponential gaming system, or
Yeah.
MEGS, from the 1980s.
Yeah.
So I had been a big fan of Mayfair's DC Heroes in the 80s, and I still consider it one of the finest games ever designed. Greg Gordon was a genius for that game. When I went back and looked at it, I realized that he had actually kind of, quote, faked it a little bit in terms of the logarithmic nature of the game. So it is logarithmic, but not entirely so. Some of it is, but for instance, you can defeat Batman by doing 1 point of damage 6 times, or by doing 6 points of damage all at once to his body, which doesn't make any sense if, in fact, damage is logarithmic. Because, right? Okay. So I thought to myself, well, I wonder if you could make a truly logarithmic system, because that, if you can, it has these tremendous advantages, because now you've created a game which is basically scale free. You can fight a brigade, a platoon, a company, an individual, a battleship, a Death Star, a ninja, and they can all be on the same scale. And by doing it with each point doubles, so strength, might 2, might 3, might 4 is a doubling each step. But that also means that you can say, well, if you're attacking twice as many people, you have -1 to your might for the damage you deal. If you're attacking 4 times as many people, -2. So it has all these beautiful mathematical benefits if you can make it work. And then I thought, you know what else I should do? I should also make it have a universal chart based on the Marvel chart with colors, because people don't like math that much. So this was like so this is my insane quest. I'm like, I'm going to make a game with a chart that's as simple as the chart from Marvel Phase Rip, using color coded, but also it's going to be fully logarithmic. And that proved hard. And
as hard as writing a good amalgam comic back in the 2000s, where the DC and Marvel universe.
Yes, that's right. Proved hard, and it took a long time, but I did make it work. And so, and in doing, everything clicked. And one of my regular gamers has a PhD in game theory, and for many years of his career, he was a consultant who did top secret work for DARPA. And he loved Ascendant so much, he sent it to his buddies at DARPA and was like, I hope the US government begins to use this for all of its simulation purposes, because the math is just this beautiful. And he keeps trying to convince me that I should do like an Ascendant version for the Department of Defense.
Well, I remember you had an interview where you said, you had uncovered the secret math of the universe, because the more you were looking at this, the more you were seeing, it's like Fibonacci. When he saw a sequence, he was suddenly he was seeing it everywhere. And someone said to you, wait, how do you know this? And you're like, what are you talking about? It's like, all of the data on this vehicle says, like, for example, that its depth is here, but according to Ascendant, its depth would actually be here. And that's eerily close to what its depth actually is.
Yeah, it was the nuclear submarines. Yeah. It just all worked out. And I ended up accidentally getting classified data correct. It's very strange. And I found that over and over. And I ended up, and so the book, part of the reason the book got so big is sort of like, you get to this one chapter called Saving the Day in the book, and you can just see that my brain broke, because I was like, I can simulate everything. And so I'm doing this is how we do volcanoes, and this is how we do pandemics, and we're gonna do breaking and entering, and we're gonna do talking to crowds, and and you could just see my brain broke, and the book grew by 150 pages just in that chapter alone.
But that chapter is great, because it also gives you things like, well, if you want to run an investigation, with several quick steps, I can say, here's the the SPs of the size of the area, and here's how complex set of clues and how well they're hidden. Okay, now I know when a player gets a yellow result or a green result, or has a high enough skill that they just get something for free. All right, I know how long it's going to take them. And actually, that was one of the great things of. We'll talk about the adventures here real quick. Your case files that have been put out. It was great to see that material in action.
Yeah, I was very, very happy with how the investigation rules came out. so much so, like I sometimes think if I ever was going to do a spin-off of ACKS, like the most obvious spin-off would just be to do like a police procedural game where you play cops and you have crime scenes and you have to like solve crimes within a certain amount of time to like get them done, right? And you're trying to guess like how many clues do I need and which leads do I want to pursue and which witnesses do I want to talk to, because all of that really, really works nicely. And yeah.
Yeah, Full Metal Dragon, 100%. I know a lot of, like, when you look at the Axe book and like the character creation and the saving the day chapter, it can seem overwhelming. But one of the beauty, I recommend everyone go check out you running the Ascendant game for people who had never played before, because player-facing mechanics, you've got two things. You've got the D100 roll, and you've got your hero points.
Yep.
That's it. There's no damage dice. There's no. It's you roll your D100 and you compare it, the result, to the table. That's it. I mean, the game runs so smoothly. I know John Doom and I. So I grabbed Draw Steel. I'm interested to see it at the table. But John Doom and I were talking about, like, even the game designers running this game, it seems slow.
Right.
You running Ascendant with people who had not played before, they were just like, the game was just moving. You got through a large amount of superhero action in a short amount of time.
Yeah, actually, sometimes the action in Ascendant can be so fast that people don't even, like, you almost just take it for granted, and then you have to like look back and be like, wow, that happened really fast. Like we had an example in a session I was running at BasedCon, a convention I was just at, where there was a warehouse with drug dealers, and they had these illegal drugs. It's the case file we were running. And so the speedster character just she says, "Oh, okay, I want to run into the warehouse and disarm all of the drug dealers." And I'm like, "Okay, so that's a disarm multi-attack. What's your attack value?" And she's like, "Oh, super speed this, martial arts this, okay." And like, so she looks at the chart, she rolls one roll, she rolled an orange result. I'm like, "You've succeeded." And then I just narrate that she's done it. And that was it. Like, and think about how long it would take to resolve disarming 32 characters in any other RPG. Right. And the thing, and you can say, "Oh, well, I could have done that in a rules light game by, with fluff," right? Like, and yeah, you could do it. You could do it in a story game, but we didn't abstract it. We modeled it. Like, like mathematically, this was the chance she could have done it to one character and the amount of time it would have taken her to do it. This is the chance for two, and because it's all done logarithmically, it's just instantaneous. Yeah. And everything in the game is like that. And so you can get so much done so fast. But then, it can also quote unquote play slow when you have, for instance, like if you have two guys that are both maxed out in might and valor and in vulnerability and super stamina, and they're in a slugfest, it is in fact a slugfest, right? It will take a long time to resolve that because they will sit there and pummel the hell out of each other. But that's by design. So
now you simplified all of the different styles of superhero games in your introduction to Ascendant, right? That most games are either tag based.
Yep.
And apologize, I need more coffee apparently.
I think it was like effect based.
Or I'm going to pull it up right here.
Okay. Yeah.
Sorry about that. I didn't mean to put you on the spot there. Here we go. Welcome to Ascendant. It's physics-based. Yeah, descriptor-based or effects-based.
Right.
And so that's either like, hey, I have, champions where it's like I have blast.
Right.
And I can describe blast however I want. Or right, Heroes Unlimited, where it's like, well, I have energy expulsion fire, and it's different than energy expulsion light, which is different than energy expulsion something else. Yeah. Why did you want to model the physics of superheroes as kind of one of your like foundational goals with Ascendant?
So it was because I've written a whole treatise on why I like simulation in general, but so let's take for granted we're thinking from a general simulationist point of view. If you're able to model the physics, And keep in mind, we're modeling superhero physics, which is a somewhat simplified version of real-world physics.
Right.
But if you're able to model the physics, then so much else that otherwise creates edge cases, corner cases, gets resolved. So ACKS is not a physics-based simulation, right? And so in ACKS, you often run into questions like, okay, if I cast a fireball, can I use it to boil water to get rid of a shallow pond that would cause problems for the fire elemental that I want to cross the room, right?
Yeah.
There's no real way to resolve that in ACKS or any version of D&D, right? Like, you're just kind of told that the spell creates fire, and you're told that it does damage, and there's some mechanics that relate to what that means. But like beyond that, you're like, I don't know. I'm the GM. This is what I decide.
Yeah.
But in Ascendant, because everything is physics-based, you could actually say, okay, well, this is the temperature we've created, and this is water, and this is the amount of fire you need to get rid of water, and vice versa.
Yeah.
And it all works out. And so because of that, it's the equivalent to a video game with destructible terrain, right?
Yeah.
It's like that, right? It lets you do all these things you can't otherwise do. So we had one game where they were trying to stop a volcano, and so they used Portal to like redirect the flow of the Mississippi River onto the volcano. And you're like, okay, how big a portal do you have? So how much water volume is coming through? And then here's our firefighting rules, and we can actually work out what is this doing to the volcano. Like, it was fascinating. I had no idea if it would work before he did it, and neither did he. And we just sat down and we're like, hey, this turned out to work. It was really cool.
That's awesome. So you've got the Ascendant core rulebook, and you have a wonderful character generator where you can make multiple universes and keep them all like organized online. That's hosted on the or you can find it through the link that I posted in the chat. You also have the Rogues Gallery, which is just a book of pre-generated characters, but it also I like the way you did the world building. In the fact that you have all of the world building, and it's a very slim part of the book at the beginning, but it's all done through simulated social media and news articles and blogs.
Yeah.
Because Ascendants are, right, there's usually two ways to develop a superhero world, right? Either superheroes have been around since that's where demigods come from and all of these things kind of moving forward, or there was some ignition point and now superheroes exist going forward.
Right.
What made you want to do the world building this way?
Oh, yeah. So initially, Ascendant didn't have a setting. It was initially just going to be a generic rule set. And a fellow on my server convinced me that this was unwise. I was like, no, man, you got to have a setting. And I'm like, okay. So I went back to a setting I had created for a Mutants and Masterminds campaign 10 years prior that had been proven really popular, where the premise was superheroes have just emerged in the world and go.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, what's the best way to tell that story? And I have always been really inspired by like epistolary storytelling, like Bram Stoker's Dracula and whatnot. And also things like, if you remember how Shadowrun used to use epistolary storytelling. So like, for instance, in some of their gear catalogs, they would actually have like little simulated message boards of people talking about the gear, and it created this very immersive feel.
And there were characters you could follow from book to book, and you would see how their runs went bad because they used thing, and then Fast Jack ended up becoming a cyber zombie. Yeah, I was completely invested in that.
Exactly. It was fantastic.
Yeah.
And in general, it creates this concept I call distributed storytelling, where to really understand the story, it's kind of scattered across all these sources. And I have this thought that distributed storytelling is like catnip for nerds, right? We love it, right? It's like we love piecing it together, and you see the obsession that fans end up piecing together all this different lore, and they create wikis and fandom.com pages and whatnot for it, right?
Yeah.
And so I said, okay, I really want to do that. And given when I was writing it, like 2019, so then it just followed the idea that it would be online, and it would be it would be social media and blog posts and things like that. It kind of followed naturally from that. And it let me indulge a little bit of my dry sense of humor. I have this kind of absurdist sense of humor that I think emerges in my work a lot. and I have to keep it in check because I also take my gaming very seriously.
Yeah.
And so this let me kind of indulge that a little bit by having, the way that you learn about the attack on Atlanta by Manticore is sort of like from a Twitter feed, right? Like
Yeah. Or the fact that the idea that the reason that the squadron's costumes are so revealing is really to get people polarized about whether they should be revealing or not, as opposed to the fact that the government has a superhero team.
Yeah, exactly.
Each one with the power to, like, wipe out a division. We don't want them focused on that, so we're going to make their costumes so ridiculous.
Exactly. Right, because it's the idea of the limited hangout that governments use to direct and divert attention. So if you make the costume scandalous and people are arguing like, should the government really have a woman dressed like that on the payroll? But then they're not thinking like, is this actually a good idea that we have like super assassins on the payroll at all? Like the whole concept is terrifying. Like, what are we doing? But everyone's distracted by the costume. Yeah,
there's a little bit of absurdist humor in that one specifically. I read that and I'm like, yeah, that feels both hysterically true and just horribly disappointingly true at the same time.
Yeah. There's a lot of that. Or like Levity becomes, that like the plush Levity dolls become, the best-selling toy. Like just
that the fact that you had a Levity plushie
right,
is just also the fact that, like, I love the name Levity. The floating manatee was just wow.
I mean, my absolute, the chef's kiss in the whole book though has got to be, is my favorite, is the blind deaf assassin Helen Killer.
So I have a superhero game that I'm running, and I have Hell's Mittens is one of my my characters, and I'm like, yeah, that's Full Metal Dragon. We are obviously on the same wavelength because that's actually my next question. So you have the Rogues Gallery, you have the core rulebook, you've got two Capital City case files, both of which are a ton of fun to play.
Awesome.
DM James is in the chat, Knights of the Smith Dinner Table. I actually used Arkenforge, which is the company he works for, to make like VTT maps. I recreated the maps from the first one for use in my campaign.
Oh, awesome.
That's how I taught myself Arkenforge. What is there? Are there more Ascendant? Are there more case files coming? Do you have like another book planned for Ascendant? I know you've ACKS 2 has been doing just wonderfully for you, and I'm so glad to see that. Are we going to get any more Ascendant?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's right now we have Ascendant, we have Ascendant Rogues Gallery, and then we have the Capital City Gazetteer, which is the maps in the book. Then we have Ascendant Star Spangled Squadron, which is the graphic novel, and we have the two Capital City case files. Ascendant Star Spangled Squadron Volume 2 is going to release in PDF this month. We're almost finished. The letterer has done all 64. All the art is finished. All the lettering is finished. We're just going through and doing the final edits. So that'll release in PDF this month, and will go out in print. Probably it takes 3-4 months to get out to print, so early next year. Then the next book is called Ascendant Power Overwhelming. It's similar to Rogues Gallery in that it introduces a bunch of new characters, as well as new powers, new skills, etc. Power Overwhelming introduces the European teams.
Oh, awesome!
Right. So each European country has its own sort of iconic superhero. So we have, for instance, Great Britain has Britannia. She rules the waves, so she's like a water controller, et cetera, et cetera. So we have a whole bunch of
hail her as she goes flying by.
Exactly. Yeah. And it was actually pretty funny because we're putting it all together, and one of my writing partners is like, it maybe we actually need to have some male superheroes, because we keep like making these really sexy female superheroes. We had to go back and kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, I guess sometimes men can ascend and have superpowers, So, and then we add some new villains. Nature's Right, which is the eco-terrorists, they get more fleshed out in the book. And and a lot of new, a lot of new powers that people have long asked for. So like reflection powers and like all sorts of new psychic powers and things like that all get added in. So that's great. And then there's also two additional Capital City case files have also been written.
Oh,
So,
fantastic.
yeah, so there's a lot going on. It is great. And of course, Macris from the Discord built a really amazing character creator tool. So
That thing's fantastic.
Going to work with him to make sure that the character creator tool gets updated for Ascendant. I'm probably going to do another Ascendant tournament where we will. The idea will be it'll be set on the island of Nauru, and it will be that Maximum Leader has invited Ascendants from around the world to come to join Exodus. And the idea is that whoever wins the tournament, their character will appear in a future product as an actual.
That's awesome. That's awesome. All right, before I ask my final question, we had some people who were Ben wants to know, where did Levity come from?
Oh, so I actually love manatees. So I have my stuffed manatee here. So, but before I had him, I actually had another stuffed manatee, this is his secret identity. This is he existed before Levity. And one day I was just like sitting around trying to like think of stupid shit to say on Twitter, and I like looked at my wife and I was like, I'm Levity. I'm a levitating manatee who does wisecracks, and that was it. Like it was just a bad pun. He's a levitating manatee who does wisecracks. And so when it came time to do the game, obviously he transcended and entered his true form, and so now he's Levity.
And can you still get Levity on autark.co?
No, we sold out. It was like my fastest selling thing I ever did. I'm like, oh wow, I really should have ordered more of those. So.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully when we get another crowdfunding for Ascendant, there will be more Levity. This may not even be his final form.
He shows up. He's in. So Levity appears in ACKS or in Ascendant Volume 2. He's in the Star Spangled Squadron comic as a character. And then there's so what's funny is, of all the characters I made, he's the one where the fans have come up with like this whole mythology about him. So they've like built out that there's like this underwater community of Ascendants that people don't know about. So there's so he's opposed by his rivals Depravity, Calamity, and all of these evil manatee supervillains. And then there's like, I believe it's a musical team of killer whales called the Orchestra, and they're like a supervillain team. Anyway, so one day I should do an underwater or all manatee source book, I guess. But.
Yeah. Molly asks, is one of them the humanity?
Like that would be it. Yeah, he's a spokesmanatee. I don't know.
Yeah, she actually plays Hell's Kitten. And her animal familiar is named Mucifer.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So actually, John and James were having a chat in the conversation. I don't know if you would be at all interested, but Knights of the Smith Dinner Table does a show called Hit Me With Your One Shot.
Okay.
And if you are at all interested, I can put the two of you together in, after this. They love having the creators come on and run their games. So I don't know if you would be interested in jumping on their channel and running a game of Ascendant, but I think James.
Oh, that would be good. That would be good fun. Yeah, after my Before All Others Kickstarter finishes, I will do that. That would be good fun.
Awesome.
Maybe we can time it with the release of the graphic novel or something.
Oh, that would be all right, James. I will make that connection happen after this. I love putting people in touch with Knights of the Smith Dinner Table. James actually runs the official Necessary Evil campaign for Pinnacle.
Oh wow!
Altered Morality is what it's called. So.
Oh, that's awesome.
All right, so to wrap this up, because I'm a big superhero nerd, and we've talked a lot about different things about superheroes. Have you read Doomsday Clock by Jeff Johns? No,
I haven't.
It was his attempt, and I'm going to put it in quotes. It was his attempt to bring the Watchmen into the DC universe.
Okay.
It was also, he solved a lot of the issues with Rebirth. That's where you discover like Dr. Manhattan. Spoiler alert for everybody. Dr. Manhattan was behind the New 52 and all the things that went wrong. But what's interesting is instead of under the hood, every issue had these reports from different governments on what was called the Superman effect, which was a conspiracy that was the idea that because of Superman, governments had been secretly uplifting heroes and villains, and they were all actually working for the government. And that, like, so even the villains, like, they would pair up heroes and villains to see how their powers would work, but even the villains were actually on the government's payroll. And there was some, like with the Star Spangled Squadron and how Manticore gets put together, it was actually really interesting. But if you haven't read it, I enjoyed the ending. I think Jeff Johns hit on something kind of really important at the end of that, which is the idea that every generation retells the story of Superman's origin, and that's not a bad thing. It's a way for them to make Superman their own and relevant to them going forward. I think there's something very like, there's a little bit of like hagiography in that, or the idea that like for Christians, we keep celebrating Easter and the Eucharist because we keep telling the same story cyclically because it's that important to us. Right. If you haven't read it and you ever get a chance to read it, I would love to have you on to discuss like kind of both components. I don't think he does a great job of integrating the Watchmen into the DCU. I didn't really want the Watchmen, but I think from a comic book writer's perspective, Jeff Johns gets a lot of this stuff on a real high symbolic level, and he's able to that overcomes a lot of the failures that may kind of go from issue to issue, if that makes sense.
That makes sense. It does. There's a, I think it's Markia is a comparative religion professor. Okay. And he talks about myth as being about recurrence, fundamentally. That the myth has both happened in the past, will happen in the future, and is happening again right now. Yeah. And if we think of superheroes as contemporary myths for our time, then of course that's what you would expect to see, right? Like it's not, how to put it, there are genres where you want to see innovation, right? Like science fiction, hard science fiction in particular, staying at the cutting edge of science and saying like, if this were true, what would this mean? Let's explore these innovative implications of this. And then there are other genres which are about sort of timeless, recurrent elements of the human psyche, of the archetypes of our soul. And when you do too much innovation in those, you actually end up destroying the genre, destroying the story, right? Yeah. And I think we've had that happen to superheroes in some ways, right? Too much deconstruction, too much deconstruction. Yeah. And so, like the plot twist of American Eagle, who's on the cover of Ascendant, is that there is no plot twist, right? Like
he is as good as he seems to be.
Yes, he is in fact just a good human being who is a decent man who does the right thing, and people have been like really refreshed by that, and that's like, oh, this is great, like wow, I don't have to feel shitty about this character.
I would argue that Superman's greatest superpower is proving that absolute power does not have to corrupt absolutely.
Yes, that's right.
Ben, who's in the chat, he's the person who asked about Levity. He, in that same book that I have my RPGs as Liturgy article, wrote a paper on superheroes as American saints and like secular saints. And like we had some great discussions, like why does all of Marvel Comics take place in New York, and why does it always fail when it leaves New York? And we're like, well, it's the icon of the world, right? Like everything that exists in the world exists in New York City.
Right.
You can't really say that about Chicago or God forbid, the Great Lakes Avengers. So, all right, well, let's end with a. Did you see the new Superman movie?
I haven't seen it. No, I have not seen it. Was it good?
I thoroughly enjoyed it. It is a James Gunn movie. So however you feel about James Gunn. But I think the reason I bring it up is your comment about American Eagle is very true about that Superman movie.
So that's good. That's good.
Like, he is Superman, and there's no you don't need to feel bad about him being Superman, if that makes sense in the framing of the movie. So
That's good. Yeah. I mean, there's that whole concept that of that the four turnings
oh
and
yes,
right, and that as you sort of go through the turnings, the stories that you want to tell change, right? We're kind of emerging out of a grimdark era and into a different era of storytelling now,
yes,
as our society is sort of like we're kind of past that 90s cynicism, and now we're looking for hope and reconstruction.
yeah.
And yeah.
I don't get me wrong, I really enjoyed Watchmen. I enjoyed several of like the early deconstruction graphic novels that came
Yep.
out.
Yep.
But I think C.S. Lewis talks about in an essay on criticism is that you've got to love something before you can criticize it and deconstruct it.
Yes.
And people are bringing up Homelander, and my problem, the guys who are doing the TV show, I think is different. But I think at his core, I don't know that the guy who wrote The Boys, Garth Ennis, actually likes comic books or superheroes. There's nothing in there. It feels like he hates this thing, and he's hate writing this comic. And I'm like, it's not what I want.
Yeah, that's right. No, I think he's actually openly admitted that he does not love.
Yeah.
Like, in fact, he is hate writing. Yeah.
Nathan Fillion as Guy Gardner was possibly the most perfect casting in that entire movie.
Green Lantern's in the Superman movie?
We have Green Lantern, and not just any Green Lantern. We have Guy Gardner.
Oh wow.
Mr. Terrific is in it, and Hawkgirl.
Okay.
And Metamorpho.
Wow.
Like we got a lot, and actually they're doing one of his follow-up projects is following Jon Stewart and Hal Jordan in what they are calling a True Detective style Lanterns show.
Oh wow!
Great! I'm interested to see this. So
that's really cool. That's really cool.
Yeah.
I was a Green Lantern fan growing up, so I started my comic book days collecting Green Lanterns. I have a huge Green Lantern collection, and he's always been near and dear to my heart.
Which Green Lantern?
So I started with Hal Jordan, but it was right at the moment when Hal Jordan resigned and Jon Stewart took over.
Yeah.
So then I followed Jon Stewart through his career all the way into Guy Gardner, and then the return of Hal Jordan and the Green Lantern Corps. Then I went back and collected all of the old 70s Green Lantern, Green Arrow team up combos.
Oh, those are great. Yeah.
Right. Yep. So and then I guess around that point was when I kind of lost track. But yeah, so I would say it was kind of like, for me, it was watching Hal Jordan have like his crisis of confidence, step away, Jon Stewart takes over, and then kind of finally Hal Jordan comes back, and that was kind of like my hero's journey through Green Lantern.
Yeah, there you go. Well, I feel like that's a great moment to end on. Alex, thank you so much for always being willing to come on. I hope that there will be more of these discussions in the future. I really enjoyed just taking some time and hanging out with you and talking gaming.
Thank you so much for having me on, man. It's a real pleasure.
Well, this will bring an end to this Beyond the Table, and who knows when the next one will be. But as we get more, I think the next one's actually going to be pretty soon. The Black Lodge Games guy wants to come back on and talk about Bloodmore. So I think we're going to make that happen. So, all right, everybody, until next time, stay safe, stay healthy, stay gaming, and I will see you all later. Have a good one, everyone.